I held this trade for 7 days while I sat in crazy drawdown for all that time. And I'm not gonna lie, this was one hard trade to hold. But in the end, the buy worked out. And in this video, I'm gonna be giving you a breakdown of why I took this trade, where I entered, where I set my stop loss, and where I set my take profit. And I'm also gonna be showing you what I'm looking for on gold moving forward. Let's get started with the video. So if we start off from the daily time frame, and if you've watched some of my previous videos, you know that gold has been in a downtrend. It's been giving us lower lows and lower highs this whole time until price got to this point. When price reached this level, it created a strong support level that it failed to break multiple times. Price hit this level and stopped, which means this is a strong support level. And if price consistently fails to break a level, that means it doesn't want to sell past this point and it's going to be looking to buy. As you can see, we had a rejection here, have another rejection here, and another rejection here. So we know that the daily has formed a strong support level that price has failed to break multiple times. So if we go down to the 4-hour time frame, as you can see, we have a lower low, have a lower high. Price gave us another lower low, gave us a lower high, came back down, tried to break this level and failed, giving us equal lows. Then ended up breaking this level, giving us a higher high. Sellers ended up pushing price back down to retest this level. As you can see, it still failed. We have failed. That is 4 times price has failed to break past this gray box. So if you've watched my previous videos, you know that we do the markups on the 4-hour time frame and the daily time frame. And in this case, I did my markups on the 4-hour time frame because it was clearer on the 4-hour time frame than the daily time frame, right? And if you need help learning how to mark up your charts, I have a video on that. I shared it on my channel. I'll leave the link in the description box below. You guys can watch it after this video so that you can learn how you can mark up your charts. But we do the markups on the 4-hour time frame or the daily time frame. So as you can see on the 4-hour time frame, once price reached to this point, which is around 41.89, it started building bearish movement back to the downside. This is the last valid previous lower high that price had created before creating this whole movement and failing to break out at this point. And that's why it's marked with this black line. This is now our key level. And when price got to this point and failed to break out, buyers ended up kicking in and pushing price to the upside, giving us a break of this last lower high that we had and an indication to the upside, showing us that anything above 40.68 has potential to buy from here all the way to up here, and then potentially all the way to up here. So if you're new here or if you know me, you know that we trade ICC, which is indication, correction, and continuation. We currently have an indication to the upside, showing us that anything above 40.68 has potential to buy. So our indication is done, and we currently have a low, we have a high. Then we had to wait for a correction. Price ended up correcting. We are still on the 4-hour time frame, right? I always wait for my indication and my correction on the 4-hour time frame. So we had an indication, we waited for a correction. Price ended up correcting, but when it corrected, it gave us a higher low. And then when price came back above this black line, that was my entry. But this entry did not work out for me. And if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that I shared this loss on my stories. I usually share my before and after of my trades on Instagram and on Twitter. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, please go follow me on Instagram and Twitter. This first entry did not work because this was Friday and the market ended up closing. Monday morning when the market opened, it gave me a little bit of profit, but then it ended up coming back to the downside, which ended up hitting my stop loss that was around here. But that did not mean that the setup was wrong. The only way this setup would have been invalid is if price ended up coming below this last higher low that it created, giving us an indication, a correction, and we would have taken sales to the downside. Sellers ended up pushing price to the downside, but still failed to break and close past this level, which showed me that my setup was still valid, and if price was to come back above 40.68, that would have been my entry. We are still on the 4-hour time frame. I get this question a lot where you guys ask me which time frame do I usually use for my indication and my correction. I mark up on the 4-hour, I wait for the indication on the 4-hour and the correction on the 4-hour time frame, right? It's only when I'm ready to take entries that I switch to the 1-hour time frame. So we had an indication on the 4-hour, we have a correction on the 4-hour. The correction on the 4-hour created a higher low, then it created a lower high. But when price came back down here, it created equal lows because it failed to break and close past this higher low that it created. When price came back above 40.68, this was my entry. And I shared this photo on Instagram and Twitter and my Telegram group, showing you guys that I've entered this trade. I entered as soon as price came back above this black line. So when you go down to the 1-hour time frame, the 1-hour time frame is going to give you way more information than the 4-hour time frame. This is the last higher low on the 4-hour time frame, and this is the gray box that it failed to break on the 4-hour time frame. On the 1-hour time frame, it shows that price ended up closing below this level, which is okay. But I need you to remember that on the 4-hour time frame, this is just a week. This is not a candle body close on the 4-hour time frame. This is just a week. And if you also apply the market structure rules, if price was truly selling off on the 1-hour time frame, it would have kept on making lower lows and lower highs all the way to the downside. Price is not supposed to break structure if it's truly selling or if it's truly buying, right? So it sold off for a little bit, but when it tapped back into this daily support level, as you can see, it ended up breaking structure, showing us that the correction is over. Now we have turned back bullish on the 1-hour time frame too. And if you're asking what shows that we have turned back bullish on the 1-hour time frame, it's because price ended up breaking this last lower high that it created on the 1-hour time frame, giving us another indication, a correction, and a continuation, right? Let me mark this out for you guys for you to see it clearly. This was the last lower high that price had created on the 1-hour time frame. It ended up selling off. Price gave an indication, it gave a correction. This correction ended up creating a higher low on the 1-hour time frame, and then it started continuing back to the upside. This would have been your entry. Your stop loss would have been down here at the last previous lower high. So my entry was when price came back above 40.68. This is where my stop loss was, and my take profit target was up here, which was giving me a nice 1:2 risk to reward. And this was my target because this was the next level of sellers. So when price came back above 40.68, it started consolidating. As you can see, it gave us a high, gave us a low, and then started consolidating around this area. But this consolidation did not mean that price is turning back bearish. Price would have only been considered bearish if it ended up breaking past these equal lows that it had created down here, giving us an indication, a correction, and then a continuation to the downside. That is the only time you would have been considering price to be bearish. If I get rid of this and show you guys clearly, right? As you can see, price tapped into this level, ended up buying. Tapped back into this level, ended up pushing it up. And all the while, it created another higher low. So we have an equal low here, have a higher low here. And then when price came back above 40.68, that would have been another entry. So on Wednesday, once price came back above 40.68, it ended up giving us a good push to the upside, which ended up hitting TP. And this is how the after looked like on my MT5. Price ended up pushing even higher, breaking this zone, giving us yet another indication to the upside. This trade took 7 days to get out of drawdown. I held this trade because I knew my stop loss was below a valid low. If price was to break and close below that low, that would have meant that my trade setup would have been invalid. But as long as price had not broken below right here, I knew I was safe. And I usually tell you guys, just because price is messy doesn't mean your setup is wrong. And just because it's taking time doesn't mean it will not hit your take profit. So I need you guys to learn how to have patience when it comes to holding your trades, as long as there's proper volume in the market, right? And price is continuously creating proper structure. Learn how to hold your trades. Like in this case, price was continuously creating higher lows, right? So what am I looking for next when it comes to gold? As you can see, price is currently building bullish structure where we have a higher low, and another higher low. This was the last higher high that price had created right here. And we have ended up breaking this higher high, giving us an indication to the upside, right? We've also ended up breaking this level, giving us another indication to the upside. So we have an indication here, we have an indication here. After the indication, we have to wait for the correction because we trade ICC, which is indication, correction, and continuation. So we have an indication to the upside. We are going to wait for a correction to happen, and that correction has to create a higher low. So if that correction comes back below 41.48, anything above 41.48 is going to be a buy. But even if it doesn't come back all the way down here, anything above 41.83 has potential to buy from here all the way back to up here. So we just have to monitor price and see how it moves once the correction is done. So that's the breakdown of the trade. If you liked this video, please leave a like, leave a comment if you have any questions, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.